Welcome to the January 6th edition of Slow Home Studio.
My name is John Brown and this is Matthew North, and today we have a question from Montreal. Andre has a question about practical sustainability with respect to in-floor heating. And he says, I'm looking for some advice about radiant heating. I'm building a new house and would like to have heated floors because I've heard even though it's more expensive, it's the most efficient type of heat. What is your experience with this?
Well, that's a really good question, and we actually use radiant heating a lot here in Calgary in the houses that we build at House Brand. So we have compiled a bunch of information because there are some decisions that you have to make because there are different systems for in-floor heating. There's electric and then there's the water-based system, which is we call hydronic. So this is just a quick diagram just to show you the difference between forced air and radiant heating. Forced air relies on blowing the hot air around the house.
That's what most houses are.
Most houses have forced air.
If you've got a furnace, you've got forced air.
Exactly. And radiant heating, by contrast, relies on the radiation of hot water or electricity in the floor in tubes to generate the heat that rises, because as you know, hot air rises, so it warms very gradually and creates a more even heat. So that is one of the arguments for going with in-floor heating.
And so as opposed to having ducts and little duct covers in front of all the windows, and so then you've got air moving quite rapidly, here the air moves very slowly in radiant heating, but it's very even because the entire floor surface is warm, which is nice because it's also warm to the touch, and all the air slowly moves, and it's a much more even type of heat.
Yeah, so this is a basic diagram of a hydronic system. This is in a basement, and basically what it is there's a layer of styrofoam insulation between the ground and the concrete slab, and then on top of that goes your rebar, and then they lay PEX tubing, which is hollow tubing that they run a glycol product through, so like a water product which is heated by a boiler, and then they pour the concrete on top of that, and then they put the finished floor on top of that.
So it's just like an old style radiator.
Exactly.
It's just that it's built into the floor.
Built into the floor. So here's the diagram. It goes into a boiler system, and then in Calgary you do have to have air. You can't just have in-floor heating. You have to also, by code, have an HRV, which is a heat recovery ventilator, or a furnace to add some fresh air into the house.
That's because our houses are so have to be so tight because of the air infiltration from cold weather that if you don't have a furnace, you don't get enough fresh air, and so you have to be able to make it up, but it's still not the same level and not as much air.
Exactly. So here's a diagram of the process of how it is. So you can see it's quite layered, the construction. You've got the styrofoam, the rebar, the tubing, and then the concrete is poured on top. And then this is what it looks like in a framed house. And this is interesting because on the main floor, in the basement you put it right in the concrete slab. The main floor and the upper floor, it becomes a little bit trickier. Yes, and you have to really think about this because you have to think about what your final flooring finish is going to be. And if you're going to do hardwood and you want radiant heat underneath, then what you have to do is you actually have to put the tubing down and pour what's called a gypcrete topping, which is a lightweight concrete, and then put the hardwood on top. And we're going to talk about some of the pros and cons of that.
Which you then have to be careful because you have to make sure that the floor structure is sized to be able to accommodate that. And this is something that you can't just put in at the last minute because obviously the depth of the gypcrete is going to change the height of your doors
and stuff.
Everything gets thrown off.
So this is the gypcrete. So this is a really runny. It's very, very liquidy. It's very watery. It's very thin and lightweight. And then this is another thing that you can do. If you don't want to have the water-based system, which is the hydronic system, you can go with electric in-floor heat. And these are electric mats, and they are tied to a thermostat. And they come in panels, and you can put them, in this case, around a kitchen. You can use them, very common in a bathroom. The pro of this one is that they're easy to install and they're thin, and they go under almost any flooring surface. The con is they're expensive, and they're expensive to operate long term.
But you don't actually see that.
No, because this is what the mat looks like. It's in a sort of a fiberglass mesh, and the electric coils are much thinner. And then what they do is they put them down, and then they trowel on a sort of a mastic coating.
Monastic is something.
I know, I can't believe I said monastic, but anyway, everyone's laughing at me at home. But they put on a coating, and then either your tile or your hardwood goes on top of that. So this is actually quite a bit thinner than hydronic. You can fit it in. That's why it's very popular in bathrooms.
We use it. Yeah, I have it in my bathroom, and it's very nice. And you can also then program it so that it doesn't always come on. It's much more responsive. You can turn it on and turn it off.
Yeah.
And whereas hydronic takes a lot longer.
Yeah, the rule of thumb is that electric in-floor heat is zone heating. It's meant for small zones, and it's not meant as your primary heat source. You don't use it to heat your home. It's too expensive. So it's great for, you know, a bathroom. It's great for a closet. It's great for a kitchen little area if you're standing in the kitchen. Generally under tile. It is not a primary heat source. Now, this is really interesting because we're getting into the new technology of in-floor heat. So the big thing is if you want hardwood or carpet and you don't want to pour the concrete, then what can you do? Well, there is a way that you can put tubing down, and you can have it actually go under the subfloor. Of course, then the tubing is going to have to transfer the heat through the subfloor. It is recommended that you insulate underneath. So this is looking from the basement up to the main floor. They've got tubing, and they've got these reflectors which actually reflect the heat back up, and then the heat has to transfer through the subfloor, and then they generally insulate between the joists. And here's an example, so to maintain the heat. Now this is, it's called a staple-up method, and this is how hydronic was done typically under hardwood floors on second and third floors or under carpet. Now, a company from California called Warmboard has come up with a new system. Which
very cool.
It's very cool, and it replaces the trickiness associated with the staple-up system, and it also removes the issue of dealing with all the structure, because with the staple-up you have to go around all the beams and around all the joists. So what this is it's actually a subfloor. And it replaces your subfloor. You can see here, these are your TGIs. So this is actually your floor system for your house. And then these panels, which have the grooves already into them for the hydronic, come pre-made, and they have the insulation and the reflector already as part of it. And they are completely even. So they go right over top of the entire structure.
So you're integrating the structure of the sheathing with the substrate for
that houses the hydronic.
Yeah,
it's actually a brilliant system.
There it is.
This is it being installed. You can see here how it goes down, and the groove of the subfloor is accommodated for the hydronic system. The top piece, this is actually a sort of almost like an egg crate surface that actually acts as the reflector. And it's a very cool system because it ensures even heat right to the edge of the wall, and it has your interior walls actually go right on top of this. So a little bit different in terms of sequencing, because you put this on, and then you put your tubing in, and then you frame your interior walls. So it's a little bit different.
And the big advantage of that, just if you've ever done this the old way with the concrete, is that the tubes have to be in a certain distance from the wall. And so you can get a bit of a cold area, particularly in a cold climate. By having this, where it's actually part of the sheathing, you don't have that.
No, it goes right to the edge. So here you're seeing the layers of construction. So we've got the warm board with the tubing. Then we've got our underlay for our hardwood. So you just still put an underlay. In this case, it's a fiberglass mesh. And then you're putting your hardwood on top of that. And this is what's called the manifold. And this is where all the tubing comes up. There'll be a cabinet built around that. And those are your controls, your zone controls, where you can adjust the volume of the water going through the tubing. If anybody's interested, we're going to put a link on our site to Michelle Kaufman's project, The Smart House, which has been all over the web world recently. And she has used the warm board on 2 floors of the house, so the second and the third floor. And you can have a look and see what that all looks like.
Yeah, and we're using it right now on a couple of our projects.
Yeah.
And it's a remarkable system.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. So I hope, Eric, that helps with Andre with your question from about in-floor heating. If you want, there's going to be some more information posted as links on our site, and interested in any observations that anyone else might have about this really interesting topic.
Yeah. See you tomorrow.
Bye.